Yesterday, I got to film with Jamal and Alex Malchow. These people are ELF insiders like myself, and they do a bunch of great work. So I'm going to show the entirety of the podcast that we did together. If you want to know any more, go to both of their pages. I'll link everything that they do on their socials and their YouTube channels. Go and give them some love and support because they do outstanding work for European football and need all the respect that they deserve. Without further ado, let's get into it. ELF Insiders, Episode 1.
Dang, well, how about that intro? I've been working on some things here in the lab, but we'll see how everything goes. Welcome to base coverage, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. Per usual, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, share this with a friend, and we'll keep ELF ball talking. So, as you heard, the imports have officially reported. Training camp is underway, about a month away from the first week in the ELF. So it's time to transition from off-season to preseason. And in order to do that, I had to bring on two friends of the show to chop it up and talk some ball. So I welcome my guy, Alex Malchow, here to the show, and my guy, Matt Bressington. So what's going on, fellas? How's everything going?
Yeah, happy to be here. Love the new intro, Jamal. You've been working hard editing that. So that just got me that much more excited for the season 1 month away.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that one. That's a nice one. I was ready for that.
I probably got way too much time on my hands, but that's about to be taken up shortly. So, Matt, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Not too bad, man. I like the intro. I remember the amount of editing actually for that Brazilian video. So I'm never doing this again. So imagine you put a few hours around. Yeah, this is done now. That's all the editing I've got to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a little precise. And before we get canceled, in this day and age, shout out to all the teams for me allowing them to borrow them film, whether they approved it or not. So I gotta give all the copyright credit to them. So, hey, fellas. It's about that time. We're done with off season. All right. Who cares about who's signing now unless something crazy happens? It's time to buckle up, and we're hitting the preseason. So imports have officially reported. About a handful of teams have started camp this weekend. Some still starting later on down the month. But it's time to dive into this preseason before we get to in season. So, one of the first things we want to talk about is a simple question. Everything is made on paper right now. No one knows who's really who. So first thing I want to go to is Alex for this question is simply who won the offseason?
All right, I know I'm wearing a Paris hat, but I'm going to give it to the Munich Ravens winning the offseason. All you got to say is gold jacket. Joe Thomas is in the house. He's in Munich, and that star power is already paying off. They've brought in several new offensive linemen that will boost the team to complement that. Some new defensive linemen. So Munich is boosting up the trenches, and I think they've got the skill players to complement. Really like the team that they're building down south.
Yeah, Big Joe is here for some business, and he's definitely ready to get to work and show how to grow offensive lineman play. Look at Big Joe right here, Big Joe Thomas. He look like he can still kick step in pass protection.
That would be so sick if they put him in a tackle.
Yeah, and if there's one thing we've definitely learned about a lot of teams is that they went after like depth in the offseason. And one of the things that I want to talk about is before offseason kicked off, O-line was huge. There weren't a lot of good O-line, quality O-line, and it seems like that's been, a point of emphasis, this time around. But Matt, what about you? Who do you think won the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, Munich's definitely a contender. Marlon Worthman, Dominic Antra, Gap Brand, all amazing offensive linemen. But I think for me, it's got to be Madrid. New team comes in and takes pretty much all of the Spanish talent away from Barcelona, including Defensive Player of the Year nominee in Lukasz. So, are they going to win in that conference? Maybe not. But for me to take the majority of all that Spanish talent and the offensive line looks really solid. Obviously, you win the games in the trenches, and they took Alessandro Fernandez back. Obviously, he is a Madrid person, so it makes sense that he would go over there. They got Mario Flores. You remember him from the Dragon days? He's gone over. Yeah. He's a start. He's a great number 2 receiver to have next to Willie Patterson. We know who is good. They've got Chris Helbig, who we know is a solid quarterback. They got Dwayne Obi, a running back. So for me, to have that base of really excellent imports and then to have 90% of the starting Spanish national team, got to be Madrid. I think to win the offseason for me. Again, maybe not the winners of games, but in terms of establishing themselves as a franchise in the league, they're doing a damn good job.
Yeah, and they got the benefit of playing in the West. All right, they got the benefit of going up against, and we talked about this off air, like just the amount of just talent in the West. If anything, I think they got guys to match up in some capacity. It's really going to depend on the homegrowns per every team. But I think Madrid did a good job for a first-time team, because you've seen like teams like Milan, or you've seen teams like the Guards, or you've seen like other teams coming in that can't always get the best players. And I think they did a good job at attacking not just like their homegrowns in the Madrid area, but getting good quality Spaniards to play for Das Bravos. So we will see how the Bravos turn out this year in that capacity.
Quick note on the Bravos: their uniforms look really good. I'm excited to see them on the field. I like the drip.
I like the helmets too.
Yeah, we're off to a good start with Madrid. Although I don't think I could deal with another either all black, all red, or whatever team. We need some more variety. But that's a discussion for another day.
Every thumbnail I've done is red, blue, or black.
Yeah, it's
I went orange.
It's like, come on. That's a discussion for another day. So we'll say that. But on the other hand, we got teams that won the offseason, right? And how they look on paper. We also, on the other hand, got teams that may still have some question marks heading into the season. And if it'd be fair to say if these teams did enough to at least improve on last season. Matt, who's one of those teams for you?
So I got a few names written down, but I think I'm going to go. I got a lot of smoke for this.
Get it off your chest, man. Get it off your chest, man.
Raiders Tyrrell. That's who I think is going to fall. I see the Raiders missing the playoffs. I think 7-5, maybe even 6-6. They got the Surge and they got the Ravens. So I think are better teams in general from top to bottom. And we've seen what happened with the Raiders last year, man. They had Jarvis, they had Strong, they lost both of them, and then got worse. And they've lost. I think this goes massively under the radar. People forget they lost Toby Letman last year, one of the best offensive tackles in the league. They lost Steven Nilsson, who is the best offensive tackle in the league. They lost people like Nitzlander, who is a homegrown corner that now is going to be starting corner at Munich.
Now he's in Munich.
And they lost people like Jalen Embry, who was also a really good corner. Like, they've just lost guys everywhere. And they've obviously refilled those positions. But personally, I think the last year's imports were better than this year's imports. And everyone else in that division has got better.
Dude, are they better than last year's Raiders? Like, if you put, like, we had like a spring game with last year's Raiders versus this year's Raiders.
Raiders last year, they smoke him. Jarvis is just one of the best receivers in the league. I think that they brought in Sidney, who is a good receiver last season, and who they got this year, I'm blanking. But Jarvis is Jarvis. We all know him. We all love him.
Yeah.
So for me, I just see the Raiders kind of falling behind the Munich. Also, we discussed Munich being really good. Yeah. Surge, and now Surge aren't that team of. They were really good last season, but they were terrible last year. Now the expectation is championship for Surge. I mean, it's not 2022 Surge. And now they're loaded. They're absolutely loaded. So I think they both just kind of gap the Raiders, and then the Raiders are kind of stuck in maybe a Berlin-esque purgatory.
Well, let me ask you, because this was obviously the big question last year, and obviously we've seen the job of that pan out. Do they have a better quarterback now than they did with Christian Strong?
That's a tough one, because I like Fulford, but there's not a bunch of tape on him, and he hasn't played in like 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, he dominated at D3 level, which is great. But
he played at the good D3 school, though.
Yeah.
Union, yeah.
I know it's like you're going to talk about him. I know you're going to talk about him, but I'll let you talk about Ben Holmes. But we need to see. I'm a recency guy. I mean, what have you done for me lately? And Chris Strong has done more for me lately than D'Angelo Fulford. Although I do think Fulford's going to be solid, and I do think he's going to be a very good quarterback. Does he fit into the J.J. and Clarks, the Hennessy's, the Chad Jeffries, and the Zacks? And Zach Edwards? I'm not so sure. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, definitely gonna have to wait and see. What about you, Alex? Give me a team you think still has question marks?
Yeah. I was kind of with Matt on the Raiders. My other team I'm looking at is the Hamburg Sea Devils. Obviously, last year was a disappointing year. Can they bounce back into being a playoff contender. The other thing is they're like the traveling show of the ELF this year. They're playing all across northern Germany.
Yeah.
So they better be fun to watch, in my opinion. If they're going to play in these big stadiums, I hope they're playing some good ball. So they need to be at least around 500. Otherwise, it might not be good for the league, in all honesty. So I hope Jabari Clark, can take that step from dominating the GFL South to playing now at a much higher level, I think. If their homegrowns can step up, obviously they lost a lot of players. So there's going to have to be some youth movement in Hamburg.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about it, right, when you think about Hamburg is they are that traveling team. So basically every game is almost a road game. Granted they're playing in multiple stadiums, but you got Jarvis, you got Theo, right? You got Javarian. But they lost, like as you mentioned, they lost a lot of homegrowns. And the name of the game, especially in the ELF, is you're only as good as your homegrowns. So with did they do enough to keep enough homegrowns in Hamburg to compete, to battle what seems like the Frankfurt or the Paris for that number 2 spot? Or do you see possibly like a dip in what we saw with Cologne over the past 2 years where, high power offense for like half a season, and then they just drop for a year and a half?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, right? I think it depends on Paris. Can they, we've seen these teams make a jump from year 1 to year 2. We're probably expecting that from Munich, like we talked about. Paris is kind of in that same group, I would say. So right now I'm looking at Western Conference. Ryan Fire are kind of untouchable right now. You can't move them off the top spot. Galaxy are in a rebuild, new faces, but they still very talented team. And then Paris. So, yeah, right now I see them as a 4th team. I would be it'd be hard to move them into 3rd, really.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely see because they're 14. Then you're looking at like, is Cologne and Madrid, are those actually like competitive? Like, do they split those or can they, win 2-0 versus those? Because that's 4 wins right there. That's easy if they
got win those. They got win those. They got win those.
They're must wins already.
Honestly,
you think they might split with Madrid?
I think Madrid might take both. Like Hamburg got shredded on defense. Like they lost not only did they lose their DC, they lost their entire defense. Except for like Victor Amorodion, they lost everyone. And Madrid just gained people. And I think Madrid even took one of their players. They took one of their offensive linemen. So damn,
that's right,
they got shredded.
Hey, we'll see because it's definitely gonna be a whole new identity. You lose your DC, you lose, great D linemen up front. Obviously, in the defensive backfield, you're going with different positions. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
They lost their D-line, didn't they?
What is that?
They had one of the best D-lines in Europe, and I think they lost everyone, didn't they?
For the most part, you lost JP Bond back to Vienna. You lost his will and Eboa to Munich.
Evans. Yep.
Yeah.
And then they lost.
Oh, and they lost D lineman that went to the Raiders.
Yes, they did, and they lost 6.
Damn, they lost a lot of people.
They lost so many people. I have it on my thing that just everyone they lost was insane. It was like 20, 30 guys that they lost.
They're gonna have to outscore everyone.
Yeah, their defense this season's gonna take a big dip. That D line last year was insane. They had like 10 guys with like nearly 10 sacks, or 5 guys, maybe not 10 guys, like 5 guys need 10 sacks. Does one of them get 10 sacks this season?
Yeah, it's we'll find out. I know on the ELF live show, Silas has been going at them all year. But when you actually start thinking about it and talking about it, it's like, wow, like they probably lost all their sack production on the D line.
Yeah.
Obviously they're probably who was their quarterback last year?
They had just watched
Bressington.
Yeah, and he got hurt. And then Moritz Mack a little bit. They probably improved at quarterback. Definitely improved. They got I'm not gonna say they improved that receiver, but they got more of a dynamic playmaker at receiver. Because Malik Stanley, he's still a dude, but Jarvis is just different. Theo is a good number 2. We'll see. We'll definitely see.
They lost by the bench too, and I think the tackles in that conference have got even better. Look at Paris's offensive line. Look at Frankfurt's offensive line. Like they've lost all their D line. Everyone offensive lines have got way better.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, Alex, you had mentioned something when you were talking about Hamburg and the Western Conference, and that's something I want to bring to the table and kind of get your thoughts and opinion on it. But you mentioned something with the Rhine Fire, right? So my question for you is it this year the Fire for a repeat, or are we going to get somebody else from the field to win the ELF champion? Are we going to have a different ELF champion for year number 4?
I'm taking the field. Fire is burning out. It's hard to win 2 in a row. I know they're stacked, but there's a bit of arrogance that creeps in. Maybe a championship hangover. I'm going to go with the field, the surge, maybe Paris, maybe another team surprises us and upsets them in the playoffs is what I'm seeing for next year.
Matt, what about you? Are you taking the Fire or are you taking the field?
I'm taking Fire undefeated season once again. That's what I'm going to take. I can't see anyone beating the Fire. I know they lost Joachim, who's like one of the best centers in Europe. I think they've got better, arguably. Like their defense is stacked. Yeah, they look phenomenal. Obviously, I've been with Jadrian all off season, so I've been able to talk with him. And the Rhine Fire is one of the places I'm actually pretty connected. So I've seen their team. Man. I'm not so sure. They even got like Fabian Wentz. He just came from Buffalo. Has just come back to help him out. Like I think the Fire are going undefeated. I can't see him winning. I think it'll be closer. Like they're not going to be beating teams by 50 and averaging 45 points a game anymore. But I still think they're going to go undefeated. I think they beat Paris. I think they beat Frankfurt.
What do you think, Jamal?
Yeah, what are you going for?
I'm taking the field. I'm not saying that they're going to go.
It's me.
Yeah, I'm taking the field. I think it's hard to repeat, man. It's hard to repeat, and I think they did lose some key guys. I think last year's receiving corps might be better than this year's receiving corps with who they had. Obviously, you're going to get Glenn for a full season. That's huge. All right. Jadrian's going to be back. I feel like Jadrian hasn't stopped throwing the ball for like 2 years. Like his arm is ready to go. But I don't know. I just think there's going to be a team out there we're not thinking about right now, or maybe, we have high expectations for that's going to go toe for toe with them. Even when you look last year, Munich did a good job playing against them, at least in that first game. Right? Munich did a good job playing with them. Hamburg, they did a good job playing with them for at least that first game. And granted, now it's like the Hamburg Munich Ravens now. But do we get that? Do we get that matchup at some point? I'm taking the field, man. No, I think we're gonna get a different champion. I don't know who that champion's gonna be yet. And I'm sure they'll probably use this as clickbait. I'm sure Andrew Weininger is gonna message me right after this. But I'm gonna take the field on this one just because you see Vienna and what they try to do to repeat and how that went last year, and that was in an easier conference than what the Fire are in. So I'm gonna take the field on this one. So we'll see what happens. But I come to you with this one, Matt. Who's your surprise team? Since you think Fire are gonna win another one. Who's your surprise team that could possibly compete with the Fire in the ELF this year? Or let me rephrase this. Who's your surprise team that is gonna, turn some heads this season in the ELF?
All right. These guys aren't going to be contenders, but I think they will win a few games more than they did last year, which is kind of hard considering they didn't really win any. I'm going to go for the Prague Lions. I think they're actually going to win a couple games this season. I think they're going to be above Berlin in that conference. I think that they can actually. Not like you got Vienna, you got Wroclaw, they can do their own thing, and then you've got that division of like the rest of that, kind of it's not great. But I think they'll be the best of the rest kind of thing with that division. They do have Adam Z, who is one of the best homegrown running backs we have. He was on the ELF Live thing. We all saw him and how good he is. They've got, they got the Enthroners twice. Let's be real. They're going to beat the Enthroners, I think. I think Berlin, they could win one of those and maybe even split them. They got Hamburg twice. We've saying all show that none of us think they're an elite club. And then they got Vienna and Wroclaw, who are obviously going to be title contenders, if not title like finalists. I just see them. They got good running backs, Tyrese Johnson-Fisher. They got the kind of the Thunder and Lightning duo at back. They got Lawrence Cornwall-Baptiste, who I've been very vocal that I think could be an all-star level offensive lineman. They've got Redeem as a homegrown receiver who we saw in the Vikings. He was an absolute savage. You got Joseph Zanata, Lucas Cadlet's at receiver. Crazy setup there. Defensively, they got Jan Kliss. They got who they got on defense? They got Daniel Wright, Alabama starting safety from a national championship team. You tell me James that guy's Brooks. Not going to be able to lock some people up? He's going to be a killer.
James Brooks, Peter Lundstrom, yeah.
James Brooks. Yeah, James Brooks underrated as hell. So I can see them being kind of one of the better teams. And of course, last season they had all that drama going on in the week 1. They were wearing the Hamburg Sea Devils helmets. They weren't even wearing their own. So this season they've got a lot more kind of their feet on the ground. They're a lot more established. They've had the first year of like, what the fuck's going on? Now they're a bit more established, and I think they can win a couple more games. So I think that Prague are going to be my improvement team, not a championship contender, but they're a solid ELF franchise.
It's crazy because when their schedule first came out, I looked at it, I was like, I mean, they got it brutal. They might get one game. But now looking at it, looking how these teams are built, looking how the matchups might play out, they might could get 3, maybe
3
before the bye.
I'm seeing 4 wins right now. I'm looking at this 4 wins.
4 wins?
4 wins.
Yeah.
I think they could get 4 to 5, maybe 6 if they're lucky. But I think maybe 4 to 5
before
wins.
The bye?
No, God, no. No.
You're drunk. I was about to say.
I like them, but I don't think they're going to beat Wroclaw, and I don't think they're going to beat Vienna in any of the games. But I think they beat the Enthroners twice. I think they split with Berlin. I think they could maybe split with Hamburg. So, they could pick up a few wins. I think they're going to be closer because they lost the Kings last year in week 1, and that was a weird game. But they showed they actually had a couple of pieces. They've just improved this year.
Most definitely. Well, we'll see how that pans out. But Alex, who you got as a surprise team this year? As a year 2 Barcelona team, as a year 3 late in the game Munich team. Who's a surprise team that could shock some people this year?
Yeah, I got to disagree with Matt here. I got the Thunder coming in. I think they're going to be, above, creeping at the playoffs again. Maybe make some noise, upset Wroclaw, maybe upset Vienna, maybe if they catch them on a bad day. We know Berlin has given these teams trouble, some close games before. Maybe all they need was another year of the same core. I think they've done a good job of keeping the same homegrowns together mostly. And now they got championship quarterback Jacob Sullivan in the house. They've got some boosted players on the O-line that I really like. So, and it all comes down sometimes to a good kicker. And they've got the best kicker in the league, Dominic Everett, Mr. NFL himself. Maybe he boots a 50-yarder to get him into playoffs. I could see it happening.
Well, we'll definitely see. And, this might have to be we might have to rewind this episode back. I think week 2 when the Prague plays Berlin and kind of see where we're at in this game. Kind of set some lines on this game. We'll see how that plans out. But
so I think the big question with Berlin is like Sullivan did it in 2021. Can he do it in 2024? He's older.
It seems so long ago since he's done it too.
That's different eras. That's ELF era 1. We've done through different eras in every season. Like, of course, they got the amazing guys they've kept, and Carl Kitchens is Carl Kitchens. But can Sullivan win a championship in 2024? That's what I'm a little on the fence about.
We'll see. I know. I don't know him personally, but I feel like he knows he's severely overlooked right now, and he might become. He won't say it, but he probably is out. Have us put some respect on his name for this season. So we'll definitely see how, that pans out from Jay Sully in the capital this year in the ELF. So we talked about teams. We talked about some schedules. We talked about who won the all season. Obviously everything is on paper. I want to know a player to watch that we may not be thinking of, or that may not have gotten enough love this offseason, or someone we can introduce to the audience. Alex, give me a player that you think someone is not getting enough credit for.
All right. I'm going to go with Paris Musketeers' own Austin Mitchell. Think about 5'9", speedster, could be the ELF's Tyreek Hill. We know Tyreek Hill was in Paris. Routing dudes up, Austin Mitchell, I think could bring that similar type of speed and route running quickness to the ELF. The guy dominated the German league last year, 20 touchdowns, 1,600 yards. I think he complements Paris well with, they have, red zone, big body receivers with Rhodes and Malchow. Now they've got someone vertical to back up those safeties, open things up. So I just really like how he fits in their team. And I think we saw Zach Edwards make some magic with Jean Constant. Jean Constant and Austin Mitchell, I think, are two players that are very similar. So I'm excited to see what he does in Paris.
Zach's had success with the short, shifty receivers. I got some speed.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. Actually, I really like that comparison.
Yeah, and I think the difference between Austin and Kyle in Paris is that Kyle's kind of the guy, the number one receiver. Austin doesn't have to be that guy. Austin's got Anthony Mahungu, he's got Rhodes, he's got Remy. Obviously, he'll probably be more of a slot or a number two for matchup purposes. And we've seen everybody who's been the top receiver in the GLF has success. Obviously, look at what Andrew Jackson did last year for Berlin. I agree with you. I don't think Austin's getting a lot of love. And, to be honest, he's going to be a fan favorite when it comes to fantasy. Cough, cough. So
nice. So
get out my cue right now as I haven't been waiting. But Matt, tell me who's a player, and maybe you might have someone on the other side of the ball that we should be giving more love to this season.
No, but I'm the European here, so I'm going to go for my European flavor today. I'm going to go for Flamore Simon. I don't think Flamore Simon gets mentioned at all. I was having a discussion with one of the quarterbacks in the ELF, name him nameless. He goes, I'm having an argument with one of my teammates about the best linebackers in Europe. I was like, oh, it's probably, Lucky. And they're like, oh, what about Flamore? I looked back into the tape and damn, Flamore Simon might be one of the best linebackers in the league. Not European linebackers. Like he's 6'5", 245 for starters.
Is he really that big?
He's huge.
Wow. I thought he was like, I didn't think he was 6'5". That's crazy.
Yeah, he's massive. I was waiting to list that as per ELF. If I'm wrong, the ELF also says people are like 3 foot sometimes. So it's ELF stats. But he's huge. You can see him on tape. He stands out. He can come out into the slot and he can cover wide receivers in the zone coverage. He has outstanding burst to close. There's a play. It starts the first play of the third quarter against Hamburg in that, the big one they played in the stadium. I think it was week 2. He reads the screen perfectly, comes in, levels the running back, and he just flows through the offensive line so well. His movement, his burst, his athleticism. He's 24 years old. Like he's going to be a superstar in this league if they keep him. I think that he is going to be the best linebacker. And I've said, kind of like retweeted in ELFopedia saying he's going to rise up the tackling boards. He will. Him and Kenzie at middle linebacker for that Brown team, just severely underrated. And I think Flamore might even be a defensive player of the year guy. I think of him that highly because he can rush a quarterback and he can cover and he can do anything you want to run and pass. Phenomenal.
And that's what the Fire like. They like those lengthy outside linebackers who could rush, but who could also cover if they had to. And they like to get creative with those types of guys. Hence why they signed so many last year. They signed. They had a lot of depth at that linebacker position, and maybe because they knew Lukasz Ross was going CFL or whatever, and they just wanted some more quality. But they've always valued that linebacker position. So, one of the guys I want to point out that is not getting enough love, and I know Matt, you've talked about him, and I feel bad I'm blanking on his name right now, but it's my Dejon Owens.
Oh, Dejon Owens. Yeah.
Dejon Owens from Cologne is probably one of the top corners in all of the ELF, but doesn't get any love because the team was what they were. But we'll see how I don't know anything about Cologne this year, if I'm just being honest. So we'll see. We'll see how they are this season. But Dejan, he's always covering the number one. He's usually a field corner, lanky. I think he's probably like 6'1", 6 foot maybe. But he goes against all the number one receivers. So I'm excited to see his development in regards to like how that pans out, this year as well. So, but before we wrap this thing up, I got one more question for you guys. And, a lot of podcasts, ELF Live, whatever, obviously they're giving, a lot of like obvious predictions. All right. Things that kind of we already know about. But what I want to ask you guys, and Matt, I'll go to you first, is give me what you would consider a bold prediction heading into this year. Obviously, we're preseason, but give me a bold prediction heading into this year, the ELF.
All right. I've been quite bold with my predictions already on this one, so I'm going to go one side. Obviously, I said Ryan Farrell going to go undefeated. That's pretty bold, but I'm going to double down. I'm going to say that Paris. Yeah, I know, right? I'm going to say that Paris going to beat Frankfurt twice. That's also going to be my addition.
The sweep?
Yeah, it's going to be my sweep. That's going to be my addition to also Ryan Farrell go undefeated. So
hold on.
I think that
hold on.
Yeah, so that means that Frankfurt's not going to have a great season if I'm saying stuff like that because they're going to lose 4 times to those two big teams. I mean, Ryan Farrell
so
Frankfurt at the moment. Let's be real.
You're giving Frankfurt. I'm assuming you're giving Frankfurt 4 losses off the bat.
That's right. Yeah. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. It's controversial, but we said bold, Jamal. We said bold. I'm not pulling any punches. I know this is going to get clipped if I'm wrong, but if I'm right, you're damn right. I'm clipping it. I'm sending it everywhere. But you said bold.
Man. That is bold. I like it for sure.
Come out with bold.
I think you just gave 2 bold predictions. Was that not only the Fire going to go back to back, but Frankfurt's going to be middle of the pack after all they've done this offseason.
They might still make the playoffs, though. Let's see. That'd be kind of crazy.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I mean, they have to sweep everyone else, but it's possible. We'll definitely see what happens in that field. But Alex, bold prediction, man. Who we got for a bold prediction?
I'll take off the Paris hat. I don't want to be caught on both sides here, but I'm going with my guy. Maybe I'm talking about him too much. Ben Holmes is going to win MVP and take the Vikings to the championship game. I think we forget about how good Vienna's homegrowns are. The game is about the homegrowns. The game is about the trenches. Holmes is going to be a game manager. He's going to be handing the ball off in certain situations. But when it's 3rd and long and they need that first down, future MVP Ben Holmes is going to get it done.
Future MVP Ben Holmes, Tarleton State. One of 2 Tarleton State quarterbacks in this league this year.
Go.
What I would say about this is that I feel like no matter how good they are or how many good things that they do, Vienna is constantly underrated, in my opinion, because no one really talks about them. No one really gives them much credit besides just saying like, besides assuming they're just gonna roll through their conference. But when you look at like their roster and like a lot of the homegrowns they signed, I was looking at this the other day, like they might be one of the deepest teams this year in the ELF in terms of like what quality like homegrowns on top of like some of their top signings. They bring JP Baum back. They go 2 A's at DB, which is gonna be the first time they've done it. Usually it's just been Xavier in the pass rusher. So I think what they've done this offseason, they got a guy like Ben Holmes. I think we're definitely gonna need to see more playmaking ability from their receivers, not just Jordan Bua. Like Weston Carr wasn't really like anything, last year. Like we definitely need to see more of him. They got depth at running back. Vienna is a team that you should not overlook. Will they go to the championship? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm a fan of Ben Holmes, but we'll see. I think the East, I'm really curious to see if anyone's going to challenge Vienna this year in the East, because it's going to have to be Berlin or it's going to have to be the Panthers, at least from what we've seen last year, what they were capable of doing. No disrespect to the Thorns or Lions, but I don't think from what I've seen, you're on that level yet. All right. So take this for what it is. All right. Prove me wrong, if anything. But we'll see. We'll see how all that pans out.
You're gonna call his stat line? What's he gonna get? How many yards, how many touchdowns, how many interceptions? What are you gonna say?
40 plus touchdowns. Let's leave it there.
40 or 30?
You will see Max Sumer there too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm looking at the O-line. O-line is stacked. The receivers, these are young Austrian guys. Yeah, we don't know them yet. By the end of the season, one of these guys, I bet, is going to be like, oh, this guy's the next Marco Schneider. This guy's the next, Jordan Bua. So I think one of these young guys is going to step up and be the guy for Ben Holmes.
I mean, there's still a chance they might get Beer Bomber back. Whatever happens with the NFL.
Maybe.
That is true.
If they don't get Beer Bomber back, they're going to need another weapon.
But they got the ex-Raiders tight end. Like the 24, he's one of the better tight ends in the league. So it looks like Beer Bomber might not. If they get Beer Bomber back and have both of them, that's a pretty incredible tight end room. But I don't know about that one personally. It's
Hey, maybe we'll get the championship a lot of people thought we were going to get with Fire Vienna. Then we'll have to rewind this episode.
Yeah. They nearly lost last week. They nearly lost to Indronas, didn't they? Indronas missed that field goal. They nearly blew that.
It's a new year.
That is true.
Well, we'll see. And I know that's the last question, but this is really the last question because we didn't really talk much about this conference, but is it in this? And I'm talking about the Central. Is it fair to say that it's Stuttgart and Munich versus everyone else, or are the Raiders gonna have something to say? Is Barcelona and Milan guards are they gonna be better than what people think? Like, what are your expectations from the Central?
I think Milan will give Raiders a couple of issues because Milan have speed at that receiver position. We all know Tommy ran like a 4.27 or like say it was hand time, might be a 4.3. That's still rapid. And the Raiders lack a little bit of speed and athleticism within their DB course, so I think that he could exploit that. So I think he will give them issues. Flores Calderon, I did a whole thing on him and how good he is. Exactly. And their offensive line, although they lost a bunch, is solid. It's not as good as it was last year, but it's solid. So I think Milan can maybe challenge them. I do think the Raiders are kind of just going to fall in between those, though, because Munich Ravens are so good and the Surge are just phenomenal. Yeah. So I think that they're kind of I said there my questions remain kind of a team. So I think they're just going to sit middle of the pack.
Exactly. What about you, Alex? What do you think about the Central?
Yeah, looking at the Central right now, I think we have a Barcelona Dragons team. I don't know how they're going to do this year. Milano Seaman, right? A new quarterback, a lot of new faces. I know you said you like the receiving core, so maybe this new quarterback can exploit that. But unless D'Angelo Fulford is really like the next big quarterback in Europe, I don't really see the Raiders or anyone else challenging Surge or Munich.
Yeah, American running back. Yeah, I think. I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah, my bad. American running back. They're the only team to have an American running back, Milan. So that's different because that's not historically worked great in terms of the last few years. They're the only one. They're going to go for, they had to beef up their offensive line otherwise. That's the value trade-off having an American receiver. You get one-on-one opportunities. With a running back, you need 5 offensive linemen for him to be great. So is Kyle going to be able to perform? He's coming off of injuries and like long seasons out as well. So there's a lot of questions on Milan, I think. And then Barcelona, I think this might not win a single game. I'm going to be real. I'm kind of watching tape on Barcelona a lot at the moment for the import video because through connections, I think I know who they're going to get as the last few imports. One of them or two of them, I think, are like starter level players, but some of them, I'm not so sure. So I think the Barcelona might even get 0, and then Milan, and then Raiders, and then Munich, and then Surge.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. Shout out to the mercenaries now, and Carlton Atkins. Make sure we get this thing rolling in the right direction. If you know what I'm talking about. So I'll leave you with this hot take. I think Milan offensively is going to be last year's Russell Panthers in terms of like their personnel. I think they're really going to go try to ground and pound. I think talking to Zach and diving a little bit into his film, I think he has a little bit more in the tank in terms of what he has shown. I think he's a little bit more athletic than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think they're going to try to – they may not have like the track and fastest guys, but they're going to try to scheme a lot of teams up. So we'll definitely see how it pans out. And you can never discount the knowledge of John Gruden that spired a 2-wide banana. So we'll see how that pans out.
But blocking receivers for me, I'm not so sure if they can block on the outsides. They're smaller, faster receivers. I'm not so sure if they can block on the outsides.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. But hey, fellas, appreciate you guys coming on. This is the preseason show. All right. Off season is gone. We're in the preseason. You know what that means. The season is right around the corner, and we're about to dive into it. And then I'm sure we'll get some fantasy talk along the way, and we'll get that set up. But thank you all for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment. This is Base Coverage, and we talk ELF ball.